Before IMMAF, the amateur scene was very scattered. I don't know if you really could call it amateur either, because it was really people not getting paid, whereas the promoters would get paid and make money off of the events.
You might have had a couple of shows that said they put on amateur fights and used different rule sets. There never was any standardisation.
There really wasn't an amateur scene. There were some islands of amateur scenes in the world, but as a global phenomenon, it didn't exist. It really started with the pro leagues, and it grew downwards.
There were no organizing structure around it. There were no unified or consistent rules. There were no world championship, regional championships, even local championships. And so it was, a state of chaos, but also of just complete disorganization. There needed to be, a set of distinct, separate rules for amateur. That set was very distinct and different from what the professional rules were. And of course, that wasn't going on, in 2012 and prior to that. As we began expanding the professional mixed martial arts through the UFC, in many countries, we were asked the question of who is going to regulate your event. And many times that led locals on the ground to ask us about, is there an amateur federation that regulates the sport, because they could be the regulator for professional events also. And so that sort of began some of the discussions that we had, in particular in Sweden. So we began discussions with a group. George Sallfeldt was one of the members of that group that was excited about bringing amateur mixed martial arts to Sweden, but also had aspirations to regulate the professional side of the sport.
Lawrence was absolutely one of the first people who understood the importance of having an amateur body that could bring people in from all over the world, that was more inclusive, but that was not only about competition, but also community development, making sure that people are training safely, education, and so on.
Oh, he's caught him. Big shot there. The referee stepped in. Wow.
Every major sport had an amateur foundation or an amateur movement that was both key to generating talent, generating interest in the sport, but as said, also made it part of the permanent sports landscape. We certainly looked at the Olympic movement as a model for the regulation and the organization of amateur mixed martial arts, and that was sort of the direction of the discussions that we took.
The early meetings were interesting. We want to create an amateur body. We want to take MMA to the Olympics. That was the vision. And then in the early meetings, there was a lot about, oh, this cannot be done. This is just too big. Where will we start? Which countries? How?
We were 6 guys getting together. 2 had made more plans than everybody else. I was sure that this was going to be the future of MMA.
To get MMA legalized in France, I've been asked by the sport ministry if we have an international body. And I was saying no. So you go back and do your work in your sport and then come back and then we can talk, I said, we need to have an international body. Since day one, we had a very nice sponsor, UFC. They understood right away our vision.
They have supported us financially, yes, but even more with ideas, with people, with knowledge.
We felt it was just so important to be part of supporting the growth of the amateur part of mixed martial arts, because that is the true foundation of much of the content is distributed on our Fight Pass platform. We also support exposure for the events via our social media platforms. And many of our athletes also have come through the ranks of IMMAF amateur over the years.
From the beginning, the vision was to get to the Olympics. It's still there, and we're really working hard for it. And I'm sure we will achieve it.